there, welcome back. Let's talk about Elon Musk today. I've got a couple of questions that I'm going to ask my cards. And first of all, I want to get into his astrological birth chart because we have his birth time and the place of his birth. So if you see me looking at my screen at a weird angle, it's because I'm looking at his birth chart on my screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch into that right now. So right away, his sun is in Cancer and it's in his 12th house. He has a deep connection to family. He has a deep loyalty to family, protecting what you would associate with home, right? But it's very covert. It's very underneath everything because it's in his 12th house. This is not something that he taps into very easily. When you take a look at the rest of his chart, this isn't something that comes very easily to him. In fact, it has kind of squaring relationships, difficult relationships with his Uranus in Libra. So with Cancer, you kind of expect some stability at home, but when it has a difficult relationship with that Uranus in Libra, this is someone who has no problem disrupting the home, who has no problem, like he should be diplomatic and family focused if his sun is that strong because, well, it's not that strong because it's in his 12th house. And if it has a difficult relationship with that Uranus and Libra, then he's just going to want to disrupt things. There's going to be part of him that feels settled at home, and there's going to be other parts of him that says, I want something different. I want new romantic opportunities. Let me just say that he has 2 placements in Libra that make him a very difficult romantic and sexual partner to be around. Let's get into that for just a second. So not only is his Uranus in Libra, which is kind of a rebellious kind of energy, this is not someone who considers the feelings of his romantic or sexual partners hardly at all. This is someone who bangs and then moves on. Additionally, his Black Moon Lilith, something that is about the more hidden sexual desires, like what he really, really wants to do in the bedroom when it comes to romantic relationships as well, mostly about sexual stuff. This is someone who has some deep sexual fantasies about fucking as many people, as many women as possible. That's what he really, really wants. It gives him a deep sense of power, and he doesn't have to acknowledge this. He doesn't have to explicitly say anything about it or even think about it in order for it to be deeply effective on him and on other people. This was someone who feels to some degree comfortable in the home, in a family environment, but there's just too much disruptive and weird energy around his sexual and romantic partners. He can't stay committed. In fact, he really, really doesn't want to stay committed. So he has this weird push and pull when it comes to family and establishment, but also to romantic and sexual partners, which is part of building a family of your own, ostensibly, okay? Excuse me, there's a lot going on in this particular birth chart, I should note. In his first house, he has his South Node in Leo. So he comes from a very deep place, very deeply desirous of attention, being the king, being the Sun King, being on a world stage. And we already see this right now. At least in the United States, he's on the political stage in such a way that he's changing things for the better in some ways and for the worse, mostly, in a lot of other ways. There are upsides and downsides to what he's doing. And if better things happen because of him, it's not because he intentionally did it. It's side effects. It's collateral, not damage, but collateral benefits, if you will. This is a deeply selfish individual. When Leo appears in the first house, especially with the South Node, this is someone who thinks exclusively of himself and thinks that others should think exclusively of him. There's more that goes into that particular dynamic as well, with him thinking that he's the king and other people are just there, just vassals to serve him, okay? So something I note is that his Pluto is in Virgo. So this is someone who is very meticulous and detail-oriented and is very good at telling other people what to do. And these are the underpinnings that make his life very, very comfortable. And in fact, that Pluto, I just almost said Pluto in Capricorn, but it's Pluto in Virgo, has a trining, has a good relationship with his Jupiter in Scorpio and his Neptune in Sagittarius. So, with that Pluto in Virgo, he's very good at telling and expecting other people to do as he commands and do it with the extreme amount of detail that he expects. And then with that Neptune in Sagittarius, he has he tends to have these big wild dreams that he doesn't see very clearly. He leaves the messy details up to those people that you see in that Pluto in Virgo transit. But also, with that Scorpio and Jupiter, this is someone who tends to be very deeply private about a lot of the things, such as his romantic and sexual life, tends to be very deeply private about a lot of different things in how his home works. For instance, this appears in the 4th house. His Scorpio and Jupiter appears in his 4th house. So when he is in his home by himself, and granted that's in a lot of different places, when he's in his own private quarters, just by himself, this is not stuff that I'm sorry if I'm mic tapped. This is not stuff that he wants other people to know about at all. But at the same time, he can be deeply vengeful if people get too far into that particular sector. So he's got a team of people that he expects to be meticulously detail-oriented, and at the same time, he's got these wild dreams that people say, oh, yes, we can take care of that for you, no problem. Wealthiest man in the world with that South Node in Leo. And then if someone doesn't do as he likes, he has free will. He has complete leeway in punishing people with that very powerful Scorpio, because it has Jupiter in it. This is someone who has no problem saying, I have put many people in their graves because they did not do what I wanted them to do. That Jupiter kind of gives him permission to do that. That Pluto in a Virgo kind of gives him permission, in a sense, to do that. Remember that a birth chart are just tendencies. Ultimately, Elon Musk has free will to this day. He could choose to be one of the greatest, most enlightened people in the world, and this birth chart would still have some sway over that. But ultimately, this birth chart does not talk about the choices that he will make. It talks about the choices that he might tend to make, that he might be tempted to make, but not that he certainly will. Okay? So his moon is also in Virgo. This is someone who is a bit of a type A personality, and he's kind of been enabled to do that. Now this is interesting. His moon in Virgo has a difficult relationship with Saturn in Gemini in his 11th house. This Virgo appears, by the way, in the 2nd house. So moon in Virgo in the 2nd house of finances, money, wealth that he has almost limitless amount of. That has a difficult relationship with his Saturn and Gemini in the 11th house. So he's got like circles of people around him, maybe not necessarily friends, maybe people who pose as friends, who say, I know that you have the money and the power and the type A personality to make this happen, but that Saturn says there's a limit to this, and it is deeply frustrating to him. He thinks that he can just toss money at the issue and that will make it go away. But that Saturn in Gemini says, no, you need to think a whole lot more about this, and this isn't practical. Gemini is all about the intellect, about communication, about lower levels of education, not higher levels of education. So there are people who are saying, the basic math ain't math in here, Elon, and he doesn't want to hear that. Alongside of that Saturn and Gemini in the 11th house has an opposing relationship to that Neptune and Sagittarius, which, by the way, is in the 5th house, right? Very, very head in the sky, like way too playful kind of energy, not grounded at all. all about expansion. That opposes that Saturn and Gemini. The practical stuff just isn't there yet. What comes to mind right now is him showing off the Cybertruck. And he was like, "Come here, assistant, and show how strong the Cybertruck's windows are." The assistant throws some kind of heavy object at the Cybertruck window and just breaks, it shatters. And then he says, "I'll do it again on that other window." And the assistant does it again, and that window breaks too. Also, there was a presentation, a very staged presentation about how, look at how Tesla power is going to power this entire neighborhood. And in that neighborhood was a set. And he was showing these like little tiny itty bitty thin solar panels, like these will be placed on your house and they will power the entire neighborhood. And I remember reading in the comments of like places like Reddit and YouTube on that same video of the presentation, there were actual solar panel engineers saying, "No way in hell is this real. None of that is real. All of those homes were powered with traditional electricity. That little panel that he was holding up is an absolute prototype. We're nowhere near what he's talking about." So there you have in real time Saturn and Gemini saying, yes, you've got all these crazy, even stupid ideas. They're fucking not practical. They are flat out not practical. And here's the thing. It also interacts, that Saturn and Gemini in that 11th house also interacts with the Jupiter and Scorpio in the 4th house. Privately, he hates the people who say, this isn't practical. We need to think through this more. We need more planning. We need more prototypes. We need more testing. He hates those people because he's accustomed to being taken care of. Like, oh yes, we've got this handled, and then he gets to reap the rewards, gets to reap the benefits, okay? His vertex, what makes him, or I should say, sorry, his fortune, his sign of fortune, what makes him genuinely joyful and happy, again, lands in Virgo. So this is someone who is very, very happy seeing the people around him being meticulous and showing how hard they work and how hard they're willing to work to make him happy. That's what makes him happy. He's happy when he sees how other people's labor brings him a lot of money and wealth, because that fortune lands in the 2nd house. Because that fortune lands in the 2nd house, that tends, to indicate someone who was going to be wealthy. Family also plays a huge role in this, but at the time that he was born, where he was born, it already said that he was going to accumulate quite a bit of wealth based on other people's labor. So I'm just going to kind of hop all over the place with this particular birth chart. Not only is his sun in Cancer, his ascendant is in Cancer. So again, he has this gravitational pull towards family, towards children, towards home, but there's too much in his birth chart that's too disruptive in order for him to be a genuinely settled person, okay? His descendant is Capricorn. He's attracted towards more stable, again, hardworking people who are meticulous and who go through difficult times in order to make him happy. This is a very difficult person I've already said this before, I'll say it again. This is a difficult person to be married, to be romantic, to have sex with. I would not fuck with this guy when it comes to romantic sexual stuff, okay? Now this is interesting. His Venus is also in Gemini in his 11th house, kind of on that cusp between the 11th and 12th house, but it is in the 11th house. Now it has a sextiling relationship, an easygoing relationship with his Mars in Aquarius. Now the Mars is also about sex drive. It's not just about Black Moon, Lilith, and Pluto. It's also about Mars. It's about, I'm going to do this, about motivation. What am I going to burn down in order to get my way, for instance? And with Pluto currently transiting into Aquarius, we can definitely see his Mars energy, that willing to fight for what he is that he wants, and also a bit of his sexual energy. We can see that really amping up now that Pluto has gone into Aquarius as of November 19th, 2024. So that has a easygoing relationship with that Venus and Gemini. This is someone who can talk a very intellectual talk. when he needs to attract not just friends, but friends with benefits, again, sexual partners. He's got a lot of sex throughout his birth chart, and that should probably not surprise anybody, to be honest. He kind of exudes that. And then those people fall for it, for all his intellectual mental talk. They kind of get seduced by all the fancy words, the word salad that he presents to them. And then with that Mars in Aquarius, they may be surprised by what it is that he does in order to benefit himself when it ties to going on the warpath, for instance, when it ties into the things that he's into sexually. Oh, now I want to do this in the bedroom. And they maybe be like, oh, we didn't talk about this. But again, that Venus in Gemini is a very seductive transit, especially when it goes well with that Mars in Aquarius. That's a lot of air energy, and Mars and Venus are the traditional Aphrodite and Aries, right? So that's a relationship that works really, really well for him, but really tends to disadvantage a lot of the people that he is sexual with. And again, this is an absolute, he's a fucker. In the literal sense, is that he fucks a variety of people and it's never enough. Again, with that Black Moon Lilith in Libra, the number of sexual partners that he has, he's insatiable. He can't get enough, and he needs new sexual partners all the time. Maybe, possibly, okay? This is all allegedly for entertainment purposes only. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. And I'm looking at his astrological birth chart. If someone was also born in Pretoria, South Africa, at around the same time, within 2 hours of this birth chart being pulled up, then they're going to have almost exactly the same birth chart as he does, with some differences, okay? So this is highly dependent on free will and the choices that he's made. But so far, he has really fallen into what his birth chart has already suggested that he might have done later on in life. Again, this came up in this is what the stars were saying back in 1971. His vertex, the mathematical point that dictates some life-changing stuff for him, also appears in Aquarius. So I definitely see how Pluto in Aquarius is assisting this. And Pluto is once again about the underpinnings, the undercurrents, what lies beneath a society, a culture. And when you think about technology being disruptive with Pluto in Aquarius, the underpinnings of society, suddenly all these technological advancements are arriving. It doesn't surprise me that he would be one of those people on the forefront of that. And that it would be life-changing for him. Also in terms of bringing a great deal of wealth to him. Now that appears in his 8th house, which is interesting. That is about transformation. Normally Pluto is associated with the 8th house because that's about death and rebirth and about more sex and about even rebellion, choosing not to do things a certain way because, well, Pluto is associated with is Hades, right? He is the god of the underworld. This is someone who is very comfortable being disruptive. And I see with that true node appearing in the 7th house, in his 7th house, but true node in Aquarius, this is someone who makes disruptive partnerships. And we can see that with his alignment with Donald J. Trump. It might be somewhat surprising for some. He is someone who is deeply attracted to power, but his birth chart says that he was always going to tend towards people who were going to be disruptive for a culture, for a society, not just American society. He could have gone anywhere and been disruptive for that particular society, but he was always going to be attracted to it. And that is in fact his ultimate purpose, was to be aligned with people who were going to be disruptive and were going to end the old world order and bring about a new world order. Okay, now ultimately it was his free choice to decide with whom he was going to align. It was in his birth chart that he was going to align, but he gets to pick who he's going to align with. And unfortunately, he's aligned himself with fascists because he's deeply attracted to power. And I would expect to see that with his moon being in Virgo and also his Pluto being in Virgo. This is an entity well, this is a birth chart of someone who is deeply attracted to power. But this is interesting. His Chiron appears in Aries. So this is also appearing in the 9th house. This is someone who, through travel, through exposure to higher level of ideas, he gets exposed. When he comes around more intelligent people who actually know more than him, when he comes in contact with those people, he is deeply insecure about everything. He might see something like even the sexual aspect, again, with that Aries, that highly sexual energy. But also Aries is a very young energy. It's the first of the zodiac calendar when it starts over in March. It's the first sign to appear. It's childlike. It tends to go on the warpath really, really easy in order to defend itself. This is a deeply insecure individual, especially when he comes in contact with different ideas that he recognizes intuitively. That's a good idea, and that didn't come from me. Fuck you, right? We come back to that Saturn and Gemini in the 11th house. He wants to make friends with those kinds of people who are smarter than him, but at the same time, he is deeply uncomfortable around him. And when those smarter people say, hey, this is not an idea that's grounded in reality, that Neptune and Sagittarius in the 5th house, by the way, it's very difficult for him to handle. It's easy for him to just sweep those people away and say, I don't want to listen to you. Deeply insecure individual, okay? There is a lot going on in his astrological birth chart, and I have not even covered his transits. What I want to do right now is move on to my questions for my cards. And I'm going to reset and I'll be right back. So my first question is, who is Elon Musk really when he's alone and nobody's listening or watching? Today I am using the 7th Sphere Lenormand. The box is quite worn because I've been using it for a number of years. I forgot to fill my shuffle. Don't worry about it. You're going to be really fascinated by what his central theme is. Anima. I'm going to do a portrait spread, a typical Lenormand portrait spread. That is his opposing theme. That is so interesting. I'll be interested to see whether he appears in his... This is on his top row, just above Anima, by the way. I'll take a picture of it. This is a very interesting individual. As his central theme, Anima. I would kind of expect to see that with his sun and his ascendant in Cancer. But with that sun in Cancer and with the Anima appearing in his central theme, I wonder if he doesn't exhibit more feminine characteristics when it's just him by himself. I wonder if he doesn't enjoy dressing in stereotypically feminine clothing that would normally be considered stereotypically feminine. I wonder if he doesn't enjoy looking at himself in the mirror wearing stereotypically feminine clothing. Allegedly for entertainment purposes only, okay? Again, I'm going to take a picture of this and I'll put it up on the screen so that you can also see what I'm working with. But here is my portrait spread. Okay? So, Anima as his central theme. I've already discussed that a little bit. This is someone who does not... I know with the astrological chart we talked about how it's a tendency for him to have sex, move on to the next one because he has this sensational appetite. I wonder if that isn't also about this too. He is not comfortable being by himself. I asked who is Elon Musk really when he's alone by himself? I don't know that he is comfortable by himself at all, to be frank. I don't know how often he finds himself completely alone. I think that his thoughts would be too loud. His insecurities would be too loud if he spent much time, when he spends too much time by himself. I am looking at this diagonal pointing towards the future. We have letter, we have anima, and we have heart. He has a very transactional, very contractual kind of relationship with the women in his life. He sees the women in his life as being contractually obligated to make him comfortable with their romantic attentions, is what I see right here. And I see that continually going on into the future. This is someone who tends to consume women specifically, who tends to consume feminine energies. And that may be where ideally speaking, the 12th house in his birth chart should be a place of deep intuition, of seeing the depths of an issue without being delusional. I don't think that he's there at all. In fact, I feel like he uses women, that Cancer energy, as a shield to avoid looking at who he truly is with that sun sign in his 12th house. Something else that I see right here with a diagonal that's pointing towards the past is the whip, the anima, and the crossroad. He has continually chosen to put himself at odds, to fight with, even punish in different ways, the women in his life. He does not like women, even as he expects them to make him comfortable, emotionally comfortable. He expects them to do the emotional heavy lifting. He is a deeply childish individual. I see here with his top row, his conscious level is he expects people to obey his every whim. With that child, he's a little tyrant. I don't have any other way of putting it. And with that, like I said, with that astrological chart, with that Pluto and Virgo, he has no problem verbally whipping somebody, just kind of like we've seen on Twitter. He has no problem throwing people under the bus because they didn't obey King Elon, right? Again, with that South Node in Leo, in the first house, no less. And he makes contracts for them, or this is also about messaging. Okay? This is also about what goes on Twitter. This is about social media posts. He has no problem being nasty to people when they don't behave, when they don't do as King Elon, the boy who would be king, expects them to do, excuse me. So his middle row, you've got his reality. That's we got mountain, we've got anima, and we've got sun. So I do see the women in his life exposing what kinds of difficulties he's put them through, what kinds of challenges he's put them through. And already, with the story with his first wife, she's already put her story out there, and there are dozens of other women that whose lives he's destroyed to some degree or another to suit him. And they're going to talk about that. At the same time, there are plenty of women who have been their own version of successful because they stuck around throughout the challenges, and he is someone who tends to reward that with that Jupiter and Scorpio. If they make him feel good and secure and that kind of thing, then he does reward them, but then you have to ask those particular women, was this worth it? And in the moment, they may say, absolutely, I got what I wanted, whatever that may be. Kids from Elon, or wealth, or power, or recognition. But later on, they may privately say to themselves, I've paid heavily for this. They may, or they may not. It's up to them, okay? We still have free will here. On the unconscious row, we have crossroad, house, and heart. This is someone who chooses to be deeply private about about his true heart. And I tie that back into his sun and his ascendant in Cancer to some particular degree. Again, there's a part of him that feels deeply comfortable and secure in the home environment, but he has so much disturbing and disruptive energy that he can't stay settled. So he chooses to close that part of him off and say, I don't feel this. I don't feel this. I go back to the story of his first wife once again. They actually did lose a kid. And I remember her story where she said that she was mourning their kid, right? Her first son. And it made him deeply insecure. And he said, you're manipulating me. But she's grieving her son. She's grieving her child. He locks that part away so heavily. He cannot allow even the people who live in his home, he cannot allow people to touch it. He doesn't want to touch it because it reveals those insecurities. And we come back to that Chiron and Aries. When he doesn't deal with the very, very internal securities, then his reputation suffers, because that's kind of a grassroots coming on up to the top kind of energy, kind of dynamic right there. If he's not secure on a very deep level, it's going to show up on a surface level. So we'll take a look at his past, present, and future. Here in the past, I've got letter, I've got mountain, and I've got crossroads. So in the past, the contracts that he's made, the messages that he has sent out, the social media posts he has made, those are his choice, and they have made things continually difficult for him. He has made enemies that should have been allies. And you kind of get that with, is that his true node in Aquarius in his 7th house? That's of partnerships, not just of marriage partnerships, but of business partnerships and of enemies too. He has repeatedly made enemies out of the things that he's written, whatever that may be. If that's a contract, if that's a letter, if like a literal letter, if that is a social media post or an email, it doesn't matter. Some method of written communication has continually made enemies out of other people that should have been allies, and that's his choice. He doesn't see, by the way, he refuses to see how he's made enemies out of people that should have been allies. Again, that deeply disruptive energy that you see in that true node in Aquarius, that can go either way, according to his free will. He could have chosen to make those people into allies. He could have chosen to align himself with people who were interested in justice and like a broad sense of justice, and were interested in the better good of everybody, but he hasn't. Those deep insecurities continue to come into light because on a deep fundamental level, he knows that that's not good. He knows that, but he avoids that. Because his sun appears in his 12th house in Cancer, that should be a deeply intuitive, like sacred intuition. That should be a deeply intuitive sign, but he shuts that shit down. In his present reality, we have child, we have anima, and we have house. He is obsessed with giving children to women, making like these perfect families. And again, we go into that moon in Virgo in his 2nd house. He believes that builds up something for him, some degree of wealth for him. Also, Pluto is in Virgo in his 3rd house, which is typically ruled by Mercury, if you want to go by the whole sign. So Mercury and a Gemini. So that's someone who feels intellectually powerful when he builds, when he gives, and he gifts children to all these women that come in and out of his home. His Saturn and Gemini in the 11th house kind of points to that insecurity once again, even if they don't have an exact relationship with each other. He gets to see what real power looks like with that Saturn and Gemini in the people that he meets, for instance. And that may be where part of his insecurities lie, is that this throwing his seed upon all kinds of different women, is ultimately not what brings him security, but he wants it to feel like it brings him some degree of security. Kind of a nasty energy, if I might say. Again, he had free choice, but his birth chart, the stars, the time of his birth, just kind of give him a nasty energy. Some people are just born that way, okay? In the future, you've got whip, or he's got whip. He's got sun, and he's got heart. This is someone who is going to punish people who show some degree of emotion, compassion, love, maybe not towards him directly, but towards the people who are disadvantaged. I go back to that mountain. and how there may be some people who show a great deal of compassion towards the women that he has hurt, jilted even. When those women come forward with their stories and expose how he's behaved towards them, and they see some kind of success, whether that's wealth, fame, recognition, attention, something that he wants 100% of, by the way, he's going to fuck with not just those women, he's going to fuck with the people who give those women attention. So this is an absolute despot, a tyrant, and a little tyrant at that. Nasty energy. I keep coming back to how nasty his energy is. By his own free will, by his own choice. So that's his portrait spread. I'm going to reset my cards and I'll be right back. So my next question is, according to his soul contract, what is he ultimately here to do? And his soul contract is something that his higher self chooses before he incarnates as Elon Musk or as another kind of person in another kind of lifetime, okay? I haven't shuffled yet for this question, so let us shuffle, or I will shuffle, until Spirit asks me to stop, okay? Spirit says no more. I'm going to lay them out. Well, the first card we have is the cross. And I'll take a picture of this spread too so that you can see it for yourself. There's some kind of message that, or there's something that he writes that he doesn't want out there already, and it haunts him. When he thinks about that being revealed, for instance, he is absolutely willing with that, again, with that, what was it, his Scorpio? Jupiter and Scorpio in his 4th house. He is someone who has no problem zapping with that Jupiter, Zeus kind of energy, has no problem zapping people who might come close to revealing something about this written communication, these contracts, a marriage contract even. No problem about shooting people down, so to speak. And this may be verbally speaking, this may be literally. I don't know whether someone has died on his account. No, there hasn't been, from Spirit. Allegedly for entertainment purposes only, okay? Take everything I say in this video with a grain of salt. Yeah. Okay. So, from left to right, we have a 7-card spread. We've got Moon, we've got Whip, we've got House, Cross, Letter, Child, and Mice. Okay? So, like I said, the central theme is the cross. This is a burden that is a very, very heavy one to carry indeed. It is the final card in a Lenormand, in the Lenormand deck. Okay? It is number 36 out of all 36 cards, okay? On either side of the cross, we've got bookends of the House and Letter. And again, there's some kind of communication that he does not want out there. He wants to stay behind closed doors. And whatever is on this written communication, these contracts, this is, like I was saying earlier, this is stuff that he really does not want to get out. It haunts him. He dreams about, he has nightmares even, about that stuff getting there. Let me bring my microphone in close. I apologize. Sometimes when I reset, I forget to bring my microphone in close. My apologies, okay? Hope you can hear me better now. On either side of House and Letter, we have Whip and we have Child. Again, this is a little tyrant. I say little tyrant, I know that he's in his 50s. That doesn't matter. He has the emotional maturity of a child. He punishes people like a child, and people just bow to him. Oh, I'm so sorry, King Elon. You know, with that South Node in Leo. People don't like being around this character because he is so spiteful and vengeful and malicious. He doesn't mind lashing out at people at all in order to protect that very deep insecurity that he hauls around with himself all day with that cross, okay? This is his cross to bear, his burden to carry. On the very, very ends of this particular spread, we've got moon and we've got mice. This is an emotionally destructive person, an emotionally diseased person. This is someone who, well, with that moon, when you've got that moon and Virgo, and also moon is associated with Cancer. Remember, his ascendant and his sun sign are in Cancer. His intuition eats away at him gradually about whatever it is that he's hiding, okay? So what is his soul contract ultimately here to do? That's interesting. It's to reveal something that Elon Musk does not really want out there at all. His higher self is here to expose that part of him, to relieve some kind of karmic debt, maybe from a past lifetime, but also to relieve the karmic debt that he's incurring in this lifetime. It does make him a pariah, ultimately. But his higher self, his soul that hops from lifetime to lifetime, wants this exposed. It must be exposed. Ultimately, for his soul to grow. Maybe not in this lifetime as he appears as Elon Musk, but maybe in future lifetimes. That will be a debt that he relieves, and perhaps he does something for the benefit of his higher self. Right now, he is concealing, he is running away from his higher self. He doesn't want to deal with that. He doesn't want to deal with his emotions, with his intuition, with his need for genuine, secure love. He does not want to deal with that. No way in hell. But his higher self says, you must deal with this. You must reveal what lies beneath. You must reveal those hidden structures that you don't want revealed, because it will make you a better person, maybe not in this lifetime, but in the future. And that's a really quick spread, actually. I love Lenormand in the sense that it is blunt and quick and gets to the heart of the matter more quickly, in my opinion, than some other card systems, okay? And I love how you can read it like a sentence, even. Moon, whip, house. This is someone who is an emotionally punishing person to be around. When you are with Elon romantically, sexual, or anything like that, it's walking on eggshells with this particular individual. We already talked about how he wants to keep stuff hidden, and when people come into his home, even if it's for like a bang, or, into his suites, it doesn't matter. Whenever they come into his private chambers, whether he's at home in one of his homes or he's at Mar-a-Lago or wherever the fuck have you, he does not like people getting too close. He feels deeply insecure. And with that Capricorn and his descendant being in Capricorn, he tends to attract people who are foundational, stubborn in a good way possibly, or in a bad way, one way or the other. He attracts people who are stodgy, who are willing to stay the course and do the very hard work, and it throws him off because he has so much Aquarius, Uranus kind of energy. This is not someone who is secure around people, even though he's not secure around earthy Capricorns, but he's so attracted to them too. Also, his moon is in Virgo. He's attracted to those kinds of earthy people. And then with letter, child, and mice, he has, first of all, his written communications, whether on social media, his contracts, it doesn't matter, the emails he writes, they're extremely destructive and exposes him as a very childish, naive kind of person who can be taken easily advantage of. And that may be where that Saturn in Gemini in his 11th house, that may be where he finds most of his insecurities. Okay, it's not just his Chiron in Aries, where he's like, I see people more intelligent and more willing to be diligent, willing to be meticulous, willing to be detail-oriented, willing to work on projects that are time and labor-intensive in ways that he isn't. This throws him off. He has too much child energy. Too much for someone who's in his 50s, and I would also expect someone who has so much wealth, who has so much power. I would expect some aspects of him to be underdeveloped. I would expect to see some emotional immaturity. But this points to him sensing on a very deep level that he is emotionally immature, especially when he compares himself to other people. It throws him off, and what he does to, what's the word, not accumulate, what he does to right the ship, if you will, to make him feel more secure, is he throws those people out of his orbit. Get out, get out, get out, and punishes them as well. He's a tyrant. He's the boy who would be a tyrant. Okay? That's a 7-card spread for the seventh Sphere Lenormand. Let me move on to my third and final question. I'm going to reset real quick. My final question is, what kind of destruction will he wreak on the USA, and what will the USA look like when he's finally done? So, to answer this, I am using the Wildwood Tarot, a source of great old world knowledge. And let me try not to make a mess. So once again, I shuffle until Spirit asks me to stop. Trying to not to make a mess, okay? Sorry. Let us shuffle. I'm going to divide into thirds. And let me bring the microphone back close again. I've been moving it back to take pictures of the cards. What's on bottom is the Archer, traditionally the Rider-Waite-Smith chariot. Let me try to block my face so that you can see the card. I don't have the highest quality camera, okay? This is someone who is deeply targeting, who has groups of people that he wants to target for extinction. What kind of havoc is he going to wreak on the United States? I'm getting homeless people, LGBT people, women that he doesn't like, women that he sees as people who might leech his power away from him. He is deeply, I'm getting like earthy women, women who are deeply into their intuition, who are deeply compassionate and loving. He wants to get rid of those people, and he is someone who is deeply focused on being precise about taking those people out too. This is someone who moves very, very quickly, and you'll see also in the background she has hunting dogs. This is a female archer, by the way. And again, we get female energy with what kind of destruction he's going to wreak, and he appears as this particular archer. I did not put reversals into this. The Wildwood Tarot does not typically need this. Again, we come into feminine energy with Elon. I wonder if there isn't some degree of transphobia that ties into something that he isn't willing to admit to himself anymore. I wonder if he isn't an egg. You know, in a certain degree, okay? With those hunting dogs in the background, he has people who are absolutely willing to assist him in finding the people that he wants to get rid of and shooting them. We're going to pull from the bottom of the deck for the rest of this. Page of Arrows. Alongside the Archer who uses arrows, we have the Page of Arrows. This is someone who is a small thinker. This is someone who is disrupting winter and is leading into spring, if you want to look at the imagery itself. But this is someone who is kind of a small thinker. This is someone who expects other people to do the thinking for him, as we saw with his Saturn and Gemini in his 11th house. He expects other people to do that. He's attracted to those kinds of mentally capable people, but at the same time, he's repulsed by them because they reveal his insecurities. This is someone who, even in his 50s, is not a deep thinker. Okay? But he is a hunter, and he doesn't mind shooting down people who he perceives as coming for his reputation, even if they aren't. Okay? We have the Three of Stones, and that's creativity. He's willing to get creative with people who are willing to take down groups of people that he doesn't like and that other billionaires don't like him. So again, I come back to the homeless population. I come back to races that he perceives as inferior, less than worthy. And I see someone who is willing to get creative when it comes to taking those people down. He doesn't have to be a deep thinker. All he has to do is get in alignment with people who are. Kind of like with those dogs. The human and the dogs are working with their instinct when it comes to hunting. And even if you have a dog that was a hunting dog hundreds of years ago, the dog that you have today, such as a beagle, for instance, still has some degree of instinct when it comes to, or even, what is the pointer dogs who point with their feet? There's still some kind of instinct there. So this is someone who is absolutely willing to hone in on people that he doesn't like and is willing to lean on other people with stronger instincts than him to get rid of the undesirables. Get rid of other. This is the death card. You know, whenever I've read about what we have coming up for the United States in 2025 and 26, I've said bloodbath. The word bloodbath has come up. I've come up with the understanding that millions of Americans or people living in the United States are going to die because of this. What does the archer do? She's not firing butterflies. She's firing arrows into her prey. And then we have the death card. I've stacked them on top of each other in my particular spread. There is going to be a great deal of death, and you know, death is part of the journey that we must all go through. And it's part of his soul contract to confront those insecurities when he has no other choice to do so. When he has wreaked so much havoc on the United States, he will be forced to address what he has done because he will have no other option but to look at it. The revolution that may occur as a result of all the death and destruction that he inflicts on people living in the United States, he'll have no choice but to seriously look at this, especially when his billionaire friends start to say, do you see what's going on over here? All these people are stopping society. Past the point of protest, past the point of rioting for a few days. No, society stops because people are in such pain. Then we got the 8 of arrows of struggle. This particular figure is trying to get through a very wintry plain, high winds, and they're also being shot at the same time. This is kind of interesting with all the shooting imagery. But he's going to create all kinds of struggle, and he's said that, and so has Donald Trump. Both of those men have said that, well, Americans are going to have to suffer a little bit in order for us to get on their right track. Okay? But there's going to be a lot of death, literal death and destruction, most likely as a result of his behavior, his misbehavior in. And then we have the Green Man, also known as the Emperor in the traditional Rider-Waite Smith. This is someone who puts order to the creative chaos that the Empress, that the Green Woman, gives birth to. And I would expect to do that. This is someone who's going to work with a variety of people in order to make himself the emperor. We're past the point of king, like you saw with that South Node in Leo in his first house. We're past that point. He wants to be emperor. He wants to put a stop, a limit to all the creativity that feminine characters may put out there, because it makes him feel masculine and powerful and in control. There are no reversals, but I feel like this is the kind of Green Man who destroys instead of simply saying, okay, there are limits here and there so that the Empress's creations, the Green Woman's creations can thrive. No, he wants to end those kinds of, he wants to end that creativity, giving birth to. He wants to end all that. I'm looking deeper at the card. There is an eagle. I'm sorry that you can't see it properly. There is an eagle hanging on the edge of his cauldron. Eagle, United States. Okay? It's also about a sign of strength, He wants to exude strength and security when in fact he doesn't. Look at this right here. Five of Bows, empowerment, also known as the Five of Wands, a conflict card. We've got more bow energy, more weaponry imagery right here. So what we have right here is death is going to empower him. Him targeting people is going to be deeply empowering toward him. He's going to be able to say, see, I am meant to be on top. It's going to make him feel more secure even as people suffer and die. It's going to make him feel much more secure. And I cannot avoid the sexual imagery associated with this, and maybe you can see this too. This is someone who feels virile when he sees other people suffering. It's going to bring about a great deal of responsibility. This is the Ten of Bows, also known as the Ten of Wands. He's going to have to not be a child, although I don't know that he can pop out of that at his age, right? Is he going to be an old dog that learns new tricks? Possibly not. Probably not is what Spirit is saying. But his unwillingness to take on with great power comes great responsibility. I hate it when people love to quote movies. By the way, that comes from the Spider-Man. It's 2002 or 2001 or something like that. That's from the early 2000s Spider-Man that everybody was loving back in the day, okay? But in that particular movie, I think it's Uncle Ben or somebody like that says, with great power comes great responsibility. And then people forget that it came from a movie and quote it just ad hominem, just all over the place. But true, that's true, okay? That's coming true right here. With great power comes great responsibility. And this is not someone who has the emotional cognizance to work with that energy. I'm still filming. I'm sorry. I'm still making sure that everything is still filming. Here we've got more page energy. Page of Stones, the Page of Pentacles, if you will. And this is a lynx. This is someone who is very, very willing to defend what it considers to be its family. We come back to that sun sign, that ascendant in Cancer. This is someone who is willing to kick up quite a bit of conflict in order to defend the limits that they place on others, that, those rules for thee but not for me, that kind of thing. He has no problem fighting tooth and nail for what he believes is going to bring him a great deal of power. He doesn't mind associating with more powerful people because he thinks it's going to rub off on him, even as he's internally, privately repulsed by those people. Let's finish off with the top. We've got the Eight of Bows, Hearthfire, a group of men celebrating after war or hunting down their prey. Take that with a grain of salt. May not be literally. I feel like he's someone who's kind of on the outside of the fire because, again, he doesn't vibe with people because he's afraid if people get too close, especially men who are confident in who they are, that they're going to reveal who he is, and he can't stand that possibility. So he's going to be involved, celebrating with them to a degree, but he's also going to be kind of distant too. Go more from the top? Okay. I do see him as celebrating the deaths of millions of innocent people who live in the United States, whether they're citizens or they're here temporarily for work or whatever have you. I do see him celebrating the deaths of people. And they may not be literal deaths. They may be the deaths of their wealth, of their liberty, for instance. But he's going to be someone who delights in the pain of others. He's going to take pleasure in that. Nasty individual who is chosen repeatedly to be nasty. His birth chart gave some tendencies that were going to be difficult for him to deal with anyway if he were going to choose to be an enlightened person who was going to delete his ego or get rid of his ego, let go of it. But this is someone who's done quite the opposite, who believes that his ego is him and has already done a great deal of damage and will continue to do a tremendous amount of damage. you need to get into communities if you're listening to this. If you've gotten to this point, you need to get into communities that will help keep you safe, will help shelter you from not just Elon Musk, but from people like him who are going to be in cahoots with him. Okay? And just as we reach over the 1 hour mark, that's all from me. I hope that you have a good day. I hope that you find your people who will keep you safe, who you truly vibe with. Have a good day, okay?